Hello, and welcome to the Roll Wise Podcast, your weekly discussion about tabletop role playing games and sometimes topic adjacent. I'm Mike, and I'm here with my fellow travelers, Brent
Howdy, everybody.
and Jeff.
Hello.
One of our New Year's resolutions was to look at more sci fi esque games. So we spent a lot of times on various fantasy and modern RPGs. As you guys know from streams that we've done last year, we did things like Fabula Ultima, uh, Monster of the Week, Delta Green, stuff like that. And we really wanted to kind of change. And as you guys saw at the end of the year, we were talking about Fallout 2D20 a little bit, and that's one of the games we were looking at.
And as a reminder, on Monday night, we will be going live and playing Fallout, the role-playing game.
And if we're lucky, I will have scaled this to be a good adventure from the starting book for 2 players. So hopefully it will be more than just one session. That will be really good. So, so our first discussion of the year is actually going to be us diving into a visually stunning RPG by freeleague Publishing called The Electric State. So in case nobody's heard of this game, it's a fairly new thing, and I know that I only really heard about it from the Kickstarter email that came from freeleague saying, "Hey, we have a new game. You should buy this." So let's dive in, give a little bit of introduction to the game, and we have some stuff we wanted to talk about. So the first thing is the Electric State role-playing game is based on the art book by the same name from Simon Stålenhag. This was then turned into an RPG by Niels Hinsa. If you haven't heard the name, maybe you've heard the game Tales from the Loop, also by freeleague Publishing, and it uses the Year Zero engine. So how the game works is that in the game you play as a group of travelers heading out on a journey through America in an alternate 1997. This is it basically differs from the current 1997 that we're familiar with, because back in the 60s, some technology was developed. It caused there to be a very different trajectory along those lines. And so what you see is gigantic battle drones, gigantic battle drones, I guess they're called, and discarded trash of high-tech consumerist society that is basically in decline at this point. So according to the Kickstarter, though, the game is less about a goal. So you're not trying to fix the world or anything like that, but it's more about travelers on a journey. And when we say travelers on a journey, we mean like in the back of a station wagon going cross country in California or another place of your choosing. Brent, you were following the Kickstarter. How did the Kickstarter do?
This Kickstarter did pretty well. I think they like $400,000, I think is what they raised. And they backed. It was a short Kickstarter, roughly like 15 days, and they backed pretty quickly within the first like week or so. And they hit all their stretch goals. So
yeah, which is crazy when you think about it, because I know just a few weeks ago, I mean, we were talking about how MCDM has a game that they were inspired to make and hit a $4 million goal. And these guys, they're like nearly done. I don't know what the final number for MCDM was, but they smashed it out of the park.
4.6 million.
It's impressive.
Five times their original ask. They wanted to make 800,000.
That's good. That's good. And the difference here being is that while we have some time that we have to wait for the MCDM role-playing game, we actually have an alpha that we just recently received for this. We haven't really read through it because the alpha literally just came out today, and we were able to download it today. So it's not enough time to do anything more than just flip through the pages of the PDF and all that stuff. So let's I guess talk a little bit about this. Now the game has some very evocative images, and it's done so successful that in addition to this role-playing game, there is a movie that's being produced called The Electric State. It's coming out like next year or something rather quickly. And I believe they tapped the Russo Brothers. Is that who?
Russo. So the author of Electric State is also the author of Tales from the Loop, right?
Yeah.
Which was made into a TV series.
Correct.
A miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he had an art book called Tales from the Loop, much like the book Electric State. He also, and then the RPGs based off his work is Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, and now Electric State, which Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood are the first game, and then a sequel, which is Things from the Flood, which Tales from the Loop is children, kind of like the show was. And then Things from the Loop is they move into teenagers. And
Tales from the Flood.
Yeah, it's Things from the Flood is what it's called. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Things from the Flood, and then Electric State is unrelated to either of those games, although there are beings it's based off his visual art style. There's definitely going to be some similarities, I think, to the type of the game, the type of ambiance of the game, I guess.
Yeah, and what I thought was, I mean, I don't remember who I saw was in there, but I thought Millie Bobby Brown or something like that was going to be there, and then also here it is, Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt were going to be starring in this movie that's coming out sometime. It's a major motion picture to come out very soon. So as you guys can imagine, people are really excited about what this art's inspired, just in terms of a setting and everything like that. And so I kind of wanted to share some of the images and kind of talk about your first impressions of the Electric State RPG, like just seeing what it was sourced from. What did it kind of make you feel? I know we're not art critics or anything like that, but let's go ahead and get into that. So the first one is just the main image. I've got shared on the screen, and it's basically the Electric State. It's got the logo and all that stuff, but it looks like it has a giant Sonic adjacent
anime character. I think you just say anime character.
Some giant anime
Mickey Mouse hands.
Yeah, big gloved white hands.
Or cartoon character.
That thing is huge. If that's a freeway overpass,
yes,
or bypass or something, is it a robot? That is a huge robot.
Yeah, it's like a huge one of the huge battle droids that supposedly litter this landscape across the Electric State. And this image is actually cut off. There's actually like a road going through the under there. There's actually like a cop car, kind of examining the process. So
okay,
it's a very like what Stålenhag became known for is like very mundane images with odd things put in them, like robots and stuff like that. And this is one of those images that has that same kind of evocative style that he has, where like just it's so normal, and then there's this one thing that stands out as being surreal, and that's kind of the feeling that he evokes.
Yeah, because
it's freaky. It definitely gives you the impression. It gives me the impression that some sort of conflict has happened, right? I mean, it's all the legs are all tied up, like in Empire Strikes Back, right? With the AT-AT.
Well, and the crazy thing is you don't know if that's intentional. You don't know if it's done it to himself.
No, I don't.
Like, it's like it.
I don't know if it got tangled up in high tension wires. I have no idea.
Yeah,
but it is evocative.
It is. So the next one that I have is this one right here. And I apologize if this one's a little bit dark, but it does seem like it's kind of shows the darkness of it. And it kind of shows the loneliness of what's happening here, because the impression that I got from the art that I've seen so far is I was actually thinking that society was in a greater level of decline than the game actually presents. Because these images, I didn't really understand what they meant, but this seems to be an image of a person who's used what the game calls a neurocaster. And it's effectively a VR headset that was developed that allows you to enter almost very paradise-like virtual reality that allows you to, it's kind of escape from the current decay and the deterioration.
Kind of Ready Player One-ish.
Yeah, but instead of like, getting out and like living your life and doing all that stuff, it seems like people get sucked so much into this that you just die in VR kind of thing.
Yeah, right? they get addicted to it and displaced from their physical bodies.
So what this reminds me of, something I was talking with my son about, there's a new street drug in Philadelphia called Trank. That literally zombifies you, kind of. But that's the way the pose with the shoulders slumped and the head down.
Yeah,
it does give you that gives me that feeling of addiction.
Yep.
Just lost in the state. And it's dark and it's lonely, just on the edge of that one street light. That's striking.
You leave yourself ultra defenseless too. Like, I mean, you have to be like, okay, well, it doesn't, even though society is crumbling around me, like I'm just going to put this headset on and go somewhere else for a while. And
the high is better than the reality.
Exactly. I mean,
it's just like it's like any drug den type situation, right?
Oh yeah, it very much so. And I thought that was kind of interesting from a because I don't think that the idea that people escaping to virtual reality and kind of how that accelerates the collapse of society is a new idea. But I always liked that idea. And when I see it in science fiction, is that like I think there was like a book called like The Unincorporated Man from many years ago. Did you guys ever read that?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's kind of the same premise, is that, like society collapsed because people just got so addicted to these types of things. And I think even in like Shadowrun, they use certain, what are those?
Yeah,
What do they call them?
it's a common cyberpunk trope.
Mhm.
They're better than life chips, or what are they called in? They have a different name in like Cyberpunk Red and stuff like that. But it's
Mhm.
a pretty common cyberpunk style trope that the world is so shitty that people are addicted to technology that lets them go away.
Yeah, that lets them kind of escape it. And the worst part is when it gets monetized, then that's when you become the addict. Like that's when you become the drug seeking behavior kicks in and all that stuff. I did have a couple more images, and this is what when I was looking at the images, this is what the one that kind of confused me in terms of like the type of I guess the type of thing that it was. Because in the electric state, and obviously the electric state is based on this guy's art, and this art can be found on his website, which is kind of neat, where you could get a preview of some of the things that generated this. But I didn't expect the communities to be so big and so like functioning looking so far. I mean, they do say that it's declining. So what the impression you get here is that you have these kind of hubs that have, I mean, Brent, you said it best off screen, that have a high level of technology associated with them. But then outside of that hub, that's where the edges kind of are creeping in, and it's kind of receding, if that makes sense.
It doesn't necessarily make it better in all the senses. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say, society and law and order, if you will, still holds some sway within a defined boundary, right? There's still some control of some semblance of normalcy. Was society continuing in the places that didn't get wiped out or abandoned or whatever happens in an apocalyptic type situation?
It's kind of like megacities and Judge Dredd. Except the megacities seem, they're much worse than these cities seem to be, in some sense. But the idea is that there's megacities, and then outside of the megacities in Judge Dredd, like you still have the wasteland, you still have the evidence of the apocalypse, and I think this is pretty similar to that sort of feel.
If this was a more urban type image, like more of a like downtown setting, and I do see some buildings in the back, this is one of the most Blade Runner looking things I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, because it's all of it's like consumerism, right? Like those giant generators in the center, it's ad space up to the thing. And what's interesting to me, and I don't know if this, I don't think I actually looked as closely as I thought, but all of those are real companies. So I don't know how.
Yeah, I see Safeway and Burger King.
I don't think it actually says Burger King. It's like their logo. I bet I don't think it's exactly
reminiscent.
It alludes heavily to.
Sure. I'm not an IP attorney, so don't take my word for it.
Regardless,
what interests me about this image is this is obviously a town that is probably post war, because there's no building, like there's no skyscrapers or buildings. It's more like a community that built up of travelers, because there are small houses, fabricated houses. There may even be some tents there, but there's still this ever-present giant, corporate technology that I think is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's neat.
And then the last one I had was the one that kind of, I think, talks to the actual, it kind of gives me the impression of what was the, what you're going to be doing in this game, is that as you travel, you're going to have various obstacles, conflicts, and other things that you have to deal with. And to me, like these giant battle drones that seem to have zombie you know, kind of this umbilicus to these various zombies, people that are plugged in and everything like that. I don't know. It creeps me out a little bit. It does remind me a little bit of like a mobile Matrix. And I'm not really sure what the drone gets out of having these people plugged into it. You know, I don't know how that relationship all works, because unlike in the Matrix where they used them as batteries, these people just seem to be walking around with a giant drone. But why? Like, curiosity is killing me.
That is scarier looking though than the Sonic reminiscent head.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the battle drones I saw that were in there seemed to be, they didn't seem to be fully functional. They seemed to be very, very much at the verge of collapse, or they had cobbled themselves together in a weird way. Like, and I could see maybe these battle drones use these people and they, you know, kind of attach the, you know, kind of maintain.
Well, maybe
and
that's how they're
repair it.
connecting. Maybe they're connecting to that neural, you know, whatever the internet.
Yeah, some kind of neural
is.
space inside the drone.
Yeah.
Is that a kayak on that pickup?
Yeah, they're travelers. They're
Yeah.
like going on vacation, and there's this thing in the roadway. This is one of the things that I think makes this image is one of the images I find really inspiring for a game. Because I mean, when you get down to like basics of building an adventure, regardless of the setting, like it's basically your characters are on a journey to do something, and then there's a series of events that happen while they're trying to do this thing. And I think that's one of the things that's really great about this sort of setting is you're travelers going to a place and you're going to run into things that are interesting or weird or dangerous on your way there. And I think that really breaks down the nature of kind of a role-playing game. And like, and in like D&D, like you investigate ruins and dungeons, and the ruins and dungeons in this game are basically the remnants
everywhere.
Of this, and the remnants
where
of
the
this
truck stops.
and the remnants of this apocalyptic war with the drones and things like that. And I think that's that's what spoke to me about the game, and I think really spoke to me about thinking and how it's going to be cool and fun to run.
Well, and this image did excite me, because like I don't think necessarily just, and I was having a hard time imagining, because I backed the game because of my initial excitement from seeing the art and everything like that, because I was really excited about seeing battle droids that seemed like they were corporate mascots more than like your anime-esque super mega weapons of destruction. Like I just, for whatever reason, I was like, I like this deviation from your typical, hey, we're going to war, but instead of having, you know, like 14 MXDX mega weapons, we have 13 Felix the Cats, 12 Wiener Schnitzel hot dogs, and a mega ketchup blast cannon, you know, something. And I don't, that's probably not how the game is intended to be seen, but that's where my brain initially went. So, and I think that the idea about the weirdness of that kind of corporate blending, it's just another thing that gets me kind of like, oh, I can try these different things out. You know, like, well, what happens when you run into a drone farm? Like, but these drones are behaving absolutely normally. You know, do you stop them? Do you cut off their source? Do you continue on? What if they're like one of us and now they're like, oh, welcome to the community? Do you join in?
I think the part that is really going to tell the story is your adventurers or travelers are low on resources and they come across this drone farm. What do we do to get resources that we need from this place that obviously has it, that might not want to give it to us? And that's going to be the sort of conflicts I think you see in this game.
Yeah. And so I think in terms of post-apocalyptic stuff, I think this kind of has its own niche, and there has been a war, as you mentioned in the beginning.
It's definitely different. Yeah,
it doesn't feel like other post-apocalyptic ideas that I have. So in terms of like your own, like, do you guys have a post-apocalyptic movie or book or something like that is like your favorite, and that's kind of like the one you go to? Because I know there's plenty to pick from at this point. Like, lots of people have put their hat in the ring for the types of stories that are out there. But do you guys have a favorite, or do you have a setting that you really enjoy?
I mean, I like The Last of Us. I like Mad Max, like pretty much the classics in that sense.
Yeah, I think one that. Oh, sorry. Finish. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say one that stuck out for me was a TV show. I think it was on Showtime, Jeremiah. It was, I believe it was written by J. Michael Straczynski. And I really liked it. I mean, it was post-apocalyptic. It was people over a certain age had died.
Right.
So most everybody was teens or younger, you know.
And it was pretty, it wasn't
survived.
and it was pretty like hard, like I'm not gonna say hard science, but it wasn't like zombies or something like that. It was pretty.
No, it was something introduced into the food that pseudo scientific. I'm not trying to take anything away from the premise,
Mushrooms.
but yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily mushrooms, but it could have been. It was some virus killed off the adult because of something different in their body chemistry.
Walking Dead.
I always like that. That's one of those things that I watch. I haven't watched it in a long time. I probably have to go back and do that. But I really enjoyed Jeremiah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always kind of curious because in terms of like post-apocalyptic stuff, and after I was doing this, I was actually thinking about it and I was like, well, there's a lot of different types of apocalypses that we've experienced. We have the viral apocalypse. We have like and I think like there's a lot of those that are running around. We have the zombie apocalypse, and each of these kind of represent different things. And before we move on, I do want to say like my favorite post-apocalyptic show of all time is Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. So say what you will, but I do like how it's post-apocalyptic, but it's so old and we don't learn anything and we continue to mess up and we don't understand the entire process. It's a great comic book that is far deeper than the actual anime itself, but the anime is such a beautifully done work that I think that was really kind of like my first experience with it, but it also is like my most memorable. Other notable anime for me are like Akira, where obviously
Akira's a good one.
Akira is nice and dark.
That's supposedly more cyberpunk though, but I mean
the
reality of post-apocalyptic stuff is like pretty much most of the games that we play, role-playing game wise, most of the settings have some form of post-apocalyptic event that happened because like Forgotten Realms, the reason that there's so many dungeons and ruins and shit around is because of the ages before, and that's so it's post-apocalyptic. Earth Dawn, one of my all-time favorite games. Like the Scourge, like you're coming out of your protection after the Scourge. You're coming out to an apocalyptic wasteland sort of thing that's thriving and coming back, but it's still after this apocalypse. So like the premise of a lot of what we do.
Dark Sun count? Is that post-apocalyptic or is that during the apocalypse?
Dark Sun is super post-apocalyptic with very little hope.
No hope. No
society isn't rebuilding as well as it should in Dark Sun. And so a lot of the settings that we use to tell these stories in are essentially post-apocalyptic stories to one degree, to a degree. So
it removes a lot of boundaries, right?
Well, it gives you shit to do. Like it gives you places to go. Like if it was just a regular society, like there wouldn't be.
Well, you tell different stories, right?
Be ruins to explore so much.
Yeah, like especially if you think about it, like because I mean, and that's a good take, Brent. Honestly, most of these things having even our Fabula Ultima game had an apocalyptic event in it that we created, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that kind of helped harness that we used to kind of tell the story, and we harnessed that idea to bring it to what we were playing. So. So I guess maybe it's not as uncommon in these types of fantasy or these kind of role-playing games and stuff like that to have it's just the cycle. Where do you land on the cycle of the rise and fall of civilization?
Yeah, and whether or not civilization has managed to come back from the apocalypse or if they're still on the decline. Like a lot of the games are, a lot of our settings, especially in the role-playing sense, they've recovered to an extent, but they're still like Dark Sun, like everyone's still using magic and screwing everything up. It's a world that is going to end eventually. That there's no recovering from the apocalypse that's happened in Dark Sun, really. Whereas like on the other end of the scale is like Forgotten Realms, where it's like, yes, there was the fall of, I don't know, the floating planet or floating kingdom, whatever it was called, you know. And then there was the cataclysm where the gods came back. Like these are all apocalyptic events that they've recovered from and managed to maintain. But yeah, a lot of the places, just because it makes it interesting, like you said, it makes there's shit to explore. Like one of the things that is interesting, and this game kind of covers it too, is like what do we need to make people want to be adventurers instead of normal people? And one of the things is, there's an economy where we can go out and explore old dungeons and find gold or whatever, or fight monsters, or you know, for the local populace, and that a lot of times has something to do with a post-apocalyptic event. What makes this one different is I do feel like because of Stålenhag's art and kind of the setting that it will feel a little bit different as far as a post-apocalyptic, because there are going to be points of fairly high technological areas in this, and weird technology scattered throughout. If like Tales from the Loop or Things from the Flood are any indication, and they follow kind of that thing, the strange technology will be interesting.
But you know, and just a glance through of the book, they do recommend that you still have the 90s. Like all the music will still be the same. So if you really earned a 9-inch nails, go for it, buddy. You know, and there was a couple things that they talked about. That, you know, it's like it's 90s mushed, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
It's alternative 90s.
Yeah. So but it is going to create I think it's going to be familiar, especially for people like me and you guys, because, you know, I grew up fairly solidly in the 90s. So the music is part of my formative years, the TV shows, the type of technology that we had, I mean, like Nirvana, there was, what was Nirvana's role in a world like this where
that's the alternative that you need to kind of think of. And I think it's, you know, its influences are firmly in the 90s, but it'll be interesting to see, like, a 90s where nuclear weapons weren't what we were worried about, apparently, but rather giant cat-headed robots.
Well, and apparently a second civil war that I mean, not that I want to anticipate one in today's day and age, but 2 seconds to midnight every day. So
DEFCON 4.
So in terms of like the Year Zero engine and so far, based on what it is, because here's the one thing I do know about the game is that on my limited read, and we'll do a further deep dive into the actual game itself, you know, outside of the you know, just kind of talk about the rules and probably play through either the starter that it has. I don't really know if I want to play it in the alpha state. I mean, we can. If you guys are interested in us playing it in the alpha state, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Put it on the schedule.
There's whole chapters missing, is what I'm worried about. If it was like a rough breakdown of all the chapters, if a beta comes out, I think that would be when we would.
Okay.
But if you guys are interested in us playing this before it's released, let us know. I mean, I don't think we'd have any problem playing it on stream. I'd have to double check to see what Free League's rules are about that kind of stuff. But in terms, because I haven't signed an NDA or anything, so that's why we're talking about it. But
it's what I know of.
As part of this Kickstarter, you signed an NDA. Oops. But I think that the Year Zero engine, I mean, how do you guys feel that that's going to work in this game? Because my biggest experience with it right now, from a play perspective, is only Vaesen. I mean, I've read some of the other books. Like, I definitely started reading Aliens with the anticipation of running you guys through some scenario where one of you had your chest explode open from an alien popping out. But what do you guys feel like the Year Zero engine fits in this based on your experience with it?
I think it's going to be a really great narrative tool for telling the types of stories in this game. Because one of the things that concerns me about the Year Zero engine is combat. And this will not be a combat-heavy game, I don't think. I think you're going to have a lot of times where you have to figure out alternate ways to solve problems rather than just punching it or shooting it. And I think the Year Zero engine is very good at that. One of the struggles I have with Coriolis is trying to think of what an interesting gunfight would be in Coriolis, because it is a space game, and like soldier is one of the archetypes. So like it's sort of expecting there to be at least some combat once in a while.
Mhm.
Whereas like if you look at the archetypes in this game, the few that they have in the book, like there is no soldier. There's a criminal, but like he's mostly stealing things, not like assaulting
Right.
people. So I think that speaks to the nature of the game being very combat low, which I think will be really, really cool for telling more narrative stories. And plus, like who's gonna go mano a mano with a 9-foot battle droid?
Jeff, maybe.
The guy that was just given 2 months to live.
A guy with a golf club and a dream.
Yeah.
Golf club and
Hey,
a dream.
if you buy your friends enough time, then apparently that's what your life's worth.
$20,000 for you, Jeff.
Yeah, if it's for you to give your life meaning, for your friends to, grab rotten food so they can live for another 2 days.
Yeah, those Last of Us moments.
And so, Jeff, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on how the Year Zero engine may impact this based on your play? Because I think Vason is your main experience with it as well.
Vason's my only experience with the Year Zero engine, but it lent itself well to the solving the mysteries, barring our ineptitude. So I think for telling the types of stories that I feel, the journey types of things across this semi, weird wasteland, if you will, that you'll encounter. I think the Year Zero engine will work well for that. I think it'll help you tell the stories and do different kinds of things with the way that the system's set up. I'm guardedly optimistic. The Kickstarter was really short, and so I didn't wind up backing it. You guys talked about it. That's my fault. Like you guys talked about it, but I didn't check it out. It was just such a hectic time right before Christmas, and then I got sick. It was over by the time I got sick, I guess.
Well, one of the things interesting is Free League doesn't like some of the other Kickstarters that have raised like massive amounts of money have gone on a like campaign
Sure.
of definitely advertising, but like Free League doesn't usually do that. People in the know find out about the game, and then that usually makes them enough money to publish their game, which,
Sure.
like I said, is amazing because it seems to be mostly done.
No, I feel like I may wind up buying a retail copy or buying Mike's copy from him.
I'm
not what he thought.
I'm really excited about the game. This is definitely the type of game that I like. Surreal moments with interesting characters traveling across a weird United States. Like that, it has pretty much everything
go wrong. Really.
Yeah, it pretty much has everything that I love when I'm running a game.
Yeah. I think that, and really, honestly, I like most of the things that they've done from a narrative standpoint. And I think the Year Zero engine, they don't want the dice to get in the way of a good story. And I feel like it does just that. I do agree with you, Brent, 100% that like I feel in a society in decline, like unlike Vason, where combat was discouraged, and there were actually mechanics that made combat very much not in your favor, especially when you were fighting against, like, if you chose to go mano a mano against a Vason, that was pretty much like 99.9% chance you were just going to lose. Like there was it just was so pointless because the weights were so unevenly stacked in that particular thing.
Even my hobo that could stab him up real good.
Yeah, even with your hobo. But the idea being that if you went to like if you look at how the electric state is set up and you kind of imagine a society in decline, decay, you can imagine on those fringes that combat wouldn't be as unavoidable. It may not be as out of bounds, for you to do. So, I mean, I could experience one or two things with the combat. First of all, in Basin, combat was supposed to be very deadly, but we found it to be more spiky, I guess would be it swung really wildly because for whatever reason, sometimes even rolling 6, 7, 8 dice, you ended up missing, which is boring as hell,
Yeah, you had the whiff problem. I whiff, they whiff, I whiff, they whiff.
Yeah. So, but then all of a sudden somebody connects and it's like, boom, dead. And, it's like, oh,
Which
Okay.
to their which to their credit is more like a real street fight between two people who don't know what they're doing.
It is, but I feel like that, there's, it's less cinematic when you have like, parry thrust, parry thrust, dead. Like, that. Okay.
Yeah, that's more realistic. Yeah, you're right. It's less cinematic and more just blatantly realistic.
It's just how it goes. But I felt like I think that could be the only weakness, is seeing how that goes. Because I would hate for there to be a lot of premature traveler deaths in the story, because, like, oh, you find a group of drones, they swarm you, and like the DM is like, okay, well, let's just make this kind of a combat moment, and you fumble terribly, and then you break your neck on a chest freezer.
I just
in the
don't think
corner.
combat's going to be. I think people who choose to play this game combat like this, and this is one thing that I think would be good for our group, the home table group,
Mhm.
is that I don't think combat is ever going to be the first. Like, combat is probably never going to be your first option in this game.
I hope not.
Most of the time, it's going to be trying to outthink it. Well, like I said, none of the characters are combat characters. None of them are like, you don't have a dedicated soldier. You don't have a fighter. You have a criminal, I think, is the closest thing I saw. And then other than that, it's like a runaway kid and like a scientist, and
Scientists can work out.
They can work out, but they don't necessarily know how to knife someone.
You don't know if they do.
So I think that's true. I don't know how hard that kid is. Maybe that kid's the hardest kid on the street. But I think the Year Zero engine is good at that. Is good at doing games that are like, combat probably shouldn't be your first option. And I think that's good for the narrative. And I think this game will kind of support that. I will say one thing that I do really like about the freeleague games, like Vaesen and Coriolis and Alien, is they're not a game I think you ever look at it and go, I think this game would be better with a different rule set. I really feel like they make rules that support how the game plays. And I think the place of rules is, like, you can play a game that isn't D&D without a D20, but it just doesn't feel the same all the time. It feels close, but it doesn't feel the same. So I think systems make rules come alive, or rules make settings come alive. And I think Freeleague is very good at that. Yeah. I think Modiphius is pretty good at that too, but I think Freeleague really excels at that with like examples like Vaesen. And I think Tales from the Loop definitely does. Yeah. Coriolis definitely does. Like I said, the only problem with Coriolis is I just can't, like, making a gunfight in Coriolis seems weird, and I think it would just happen sometimes.
Well, I mean, we still have to play it, so put it on the list. I know that we have a lot of fantasy games we're still probably going to play, but you know what? Let's play Coriolis. Let's throw it on the list.
Coriolis is a space game.
Very much so.
Yeah. So,
and Jeff,
so it doesn't count towards the fantasy rule.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have any sci-fi games you want to throw in the mix? See if we can't get the.
No,
the
I have started looking, but I'm going to withhold.
Okay.
Just for a future episode, I'll have a better list than a little bit of research I've been able to do. So.
I just realized I gravitate a lot towards modern games.
Sure.
Cult, Delta Green, Unknown Armies, like those are games where I'm most comfortable. Or cyberpunk games like Cyberpunk Red or Shadowrun.
Sure. Well, and we have a huge library of games to play. So I think
not really.
That bookshelf behind you is not a huge library of games to play.
That's just not. This doesn't meet Brent's definition of huge. That's all.
Well, that's actually probably true.
The funny thing is one of these days we're gonna have a challenge that Brent's gonna have to go down to just 40 books, and he's gonna have to keep only the 40 books.
Yeah, that's never gonna happen.
What's really funny is he'll be like, "Yeah, I got rid of all those books," and they'll just be off camera to the side.
What's really funny is once you start buying role-playing books, you realize they're kind of hard to get rid of. Like, not very many people want to buy them sometimes unless they're really mega old.
Yeah, right. It's like they're desirable and then undesirable, then they're desirable again.
Yeah, like I think then they're historic.
Yeah, because I remember one of our friends had like the entire World of Darkness series and had to sell it, and then he couldn't find it for many years. Then I guess he was able to find the person who actually bought it secondhand from another person who had it. and they sold it back to him for, I don't think for very much money, but it was pretty interesting to hear that, the books made their rounds.
If you're in your spot where you're selling your role-playing books for money, you're probably in hard times, I think is what that's called, is hard times.
In some cases, what you can get for them, you might be better off using them to dry
Start
your
a fire,
hands or
or
use
start a fire.
toilet paper,
Yeah.
or starting
Yeah.
fires. Yeah.
Unless it's rare. Some of those rare ones get some money, but
the brown books, the old AD&D brown books, the like the fighter's handbook, and those, like, I think those have gotten to the point where they're
worth some money.
They're not common and they're worth some money.
I think the problem was they weren't tough at all. The glue on the binding failed on them, and
yeah, mine are all in really good condition. I have all of them. I have one that does slide out of the brown cover, perfectly slide out, like it's just the glue that broke.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that was how mine worked, because I mean the cover itself was not bad, but it's just for whatever reason the glue they used, it just whoop.
Yeah.
I think I had 3 of those books only, and all 3 of them failed in the same way. So needless to say, I think the Electric State is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a different type of game, and I really am excited to do a deep dive into how they decide to add narrative tension and everything like that through a game about traveling between places, and really the structure of how they decide that they want to do it. So do you guys have any final comments before we wrap up this episode about the Electric State and kind of see what happens next with it, I guess?
I'm really excited about it after reading some of the I'm more excited about it after reading some of the alpha stuff. I was excited about it before, but after reading some of the stuff in the alpha, it made me even more excited. I think it's a game that I'll really enjoy running.
Good. Jeff, what about you, buddy?
After finally doing some research on it, I'm excited. I think I may actually buy the book, the Electric State. That.
Yeah, I was thinking about picking up the art book too. I might pick it up.
Spawned it all. I probably will wind up buying the book. Once they actually launch, sometime a year from now, not quite a year from now. But I'm excited to play. It might even be something that I might be willing to run with certain groups. Where it's not about accomplishing an objective, where it's more about the things that you manage to get into and have to overcome in between stuff. I think can be appealing to a lot of groups, because it's how we understand a lot of television and movies and books, right? There isn't always a goal. It's just kind of how you're getting through the day. You know what I mean? And in this case, the stakes are higher than, what am I going to eat for lunch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think there's a clearer goal than most games, but there's going to be very apparent obstacles to where you get to that goal.
Yeah.
And I think that fascinates me about this. I think that's going to make it really interesting.
Well, and hopefully because of the style of game it just adds one more piece of information to our arsenal and how we can run games. Because the best part about playing all these games is, honestly, I feel it makes me overall better, because I can take techniques and styles out of all these different games and I can put them into whatever game I want, because I'm like, it would be really cool because I can take what the Electric State did about how they do the journey and stop with the bullshit about this other stuff.
if all you ever do is play one game in one way, the group will start to just solve everything the same way, right? You wind up being in a world, full of hammers, and so everything starts to look like a nail, right? You're just going to do that. And I agree with you. Playing these other games, being forced into situations where you're not just the strongest or the sneakiest or the most fearsome magical, caster, forces you to come up with other ways to solve things that in some ways are more fun than just straight combat.
Well, and it also, as a GM, it also helps you expand on like your toolbox for like making interesting situations for your players.
Yeah.
And that's always what I like about playing different games. It just gives you different ideas. Like you said, it puts different techniques in your toolbox to run different games.
Yeah.
And there's always pieces of games that you can steal.
Oh yeah, like 100%. Like I have to say that, you know, now that I've started to read the alpha a little bit and I've seen some of the things that they've done, I'm going to use that for our Fabula game just to kind of make traveling between places a little bit easier and more interesting, kind of how I frame it in my brain. Because I kind of almost have this, I think in my brain, I almost kind of had this Oregon Trail kind of approach. You guys are moving along. Jeff died of dysentery. Sorry, Jeff. You know, those kind of things. But I think this could be a much more interesting way to frame those travel between two places, is to use this kind of like scene setup. And so because I think that some people would say, oh, like in a hex crawl, you would just roll dice to see what happens. Rolling dice always turns out bad for me. Always. Like, so
For you?
Yeah, for me.
No. For me. It always turns out bad for me.
Maybe you second me first. It's very much all about me. So Brad, so we'll keep it at that. But no, I just, like I said, take, you know, and it's always nice. You can take whatever you need from each game and you can bring it to it and you can create more. You just have more fun in each game that you play. So,
and if nothing else, everybody should go to Stålenhag's website and check out the art, because his art
that's free.
Amazing. Yeah. It's his art style and the art that he has on display on his website is amazing, and it will inspire you to do different things in some of your games.
And, you know, I think that's maybe one comment I wanted to add is that I think I really like how Free League is starting from a visual and very thematic art style, and then using that to filter it to a game rather than basically starting with a game in a world and then trying to get somebody being like, hey, artist, do something like this, you know, and trying to have
try and match my vision of what this place looks like.
Yeah, it's not always going to be the case that that's how it's going to work, but I really like how they've done that, because I think that Vaesen was very strongly influenced by the Egerkens, whatever his name is. You know, his art informed how the game's feel would go and everything like that. And this game is informed very much by how this art is going, because I cannot lie, I'm reading the 4th edition book because I'm trying to get ready for when we dive back into that to give it a second thing.
It hurts, doesn't it?
The art is not my favorite.
I don't like it either.
I don't know what it is, but every time I look at art on the page, I'm like, oh, it's all muddy and blurry and like.
And it was it's very a style of its era. I will say one thing I wanted to agree with you is Free League does an excellent job correlating a visual elements to their games. Like Coriolis, the art in Coriolis is both beautiful and very setting appropriate. I do sometimes wonder if they get in. Well, I think it's the difference between they don't just write, they write from things that inspire them and then try and incorporate them in the books. I mean, and I think that's why sometimes they have some a lot of licensed properties like Alien, is because they take that thing and they're like, this inspired us, what can we do with it? And this is the Alien game that we made. The Stålenhag's art, what can we do? What world does this kind of make for us? You know, so I think that's one thing. But yeah, the 4th edition art, one of the things I hated the most, here's drink. Brent shitting on Hasbro. One of the things that I hated the most about the 4th edition art is they put halos around everyone that has psionic powers in the later book. Like everyone has it's always a halo around their head, and it's like, this is the most.
How else did you know they do psionics?
This is the most irritating visual representation of psionics ever. It's like, God, I hate it.
I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. Not that I meant to start anything with wizards this episode, but we waited to minute 48 to do something. But I literally was reading the 4th edition book and I was like, I don't like this art at all. Like, I am not inspired by this art to run a high fantasy game. Like, I'm sorry. I
think that was one problem too. Like, the art in 3rd edition was so good. Like, the art in 3rd edition, if you look at the 3rd edition books, like, it's very good. And I think it's overuse of some digital techniques in the 3rd edition or 4th edition book that makes it all look kind of samey.
I don't know what it was, but I can obviously, we can post to we'll show them when we do our 4th edition breakdown, some of the art that we met about.
You like the most.
You like them. I'm sure there's art in there that I like, because obviously I like the art from Planescape because of its weird kind of visual watercolor style.
Like the artist. Like the artist from Planescape is a very particular artist.
Yeah, and I thought it was unique, visually appealing, and all that stuff. Even though it
well,
was
that's
blurry.
the thing, and you can identify it. You can say that's this artist. Like a lot of the 4th edition stuff is like, I don't know who did that.
Yeah, so I don't want people to walk away with the thing that I can't. I have to have a crisp, clean, like AI. It's AI special effect almost.
Don't say that word. Don't say that word.
Ooh, I'm sorry. But so it's not that. It's just that whatever the 4th edition art I've seen so far is just not.
It wasn't AI art in 4th edition. It was digital art. Like I'm sure the art they were using there's a lot of new digital techniques with digital drawing, and I think it very much speaks to that time period where people were developing that sort of art style.
Sure. So there we go. That's our episode, I think. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and let people know how they can get a hold of us, and then set us off?
If you're on Facebook, YouTube, Threads, or Twitter, you can find us at Rollwise. Or if you really want, you can email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
Yeah, thank you everyone for the comments so far. Thank you everybody who has jumped on the bandwagon for our journey. We're at 97 followers now, which is a big uptick for us. So thank you, all 97 of you. Someday I'll make Mike read the whole list off. That should be fun. But anyways, as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe on your journey. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.